Hello, great to see you here. Today's 10 minutes that I'm sharing with you is about emotions in menopause. And to me, this is something that I really find is the most important part in a way, because this is part of the process of, I think, to me, this is the heart of menopause. It's the part that I believe that if we don't address this part, then it can actually make our symptoms last even longer. And part of how I've come to learn about this part is through the book Wise Power, which I really do recommend. It's more about the spiritual side, but it's also about the essence, to me, the heart of menopause for women. So what I wanted to start off with is about truly embracing the process of menopause, and that this is a really meaningful process for us in that it can help to empower us in a way we've never experienced in any other part of our lives. And you may or may not have know about this triple goddess concept, which comes from pagan times, which is that we as women, as females, go through a process of starting as a maiden, and then going to mother, and then going to crone. So maiden being about beauty, about being attractive, about being accepted and finding a partner, and then going into mother, which is all about fertility, bearing children or creating life, having responsibilities, and well, in previous decades and centuries, about being the homemaker. And then the crone is where we then develop into our wisdom and our inner power, our life experience, bringing all of that together to tap into our inner wisdom, power, perhaps rebel against the patriarchy and the old expectations, and coming into our own form of leadership. So for me, that is coming into being our true selves, just taking off all of those old layers of expectations, tapping into our true selves. And that's where we might find that we come to that point of not giving a damn. And that's where some women going through this process may have been shunned in the past because they didn't fit into a box anymore, and they weren't being malleable, they weren't being able to be influenced anymore, because they just went, well, this is who I am and this is what I stand for, and I am perfectly okay with being completely that. So I'm going to come back to that, but in the meantime, I'm going to tap into identify some of those classic emotions that most women go through in menopause, or find that they really rise to the surface. For example, anger, frustration, and resentment. And they are the three emotions that, through my work with my clients, combining the NLP and hypnotherapy side of my business, that when those emotions come up, when we first look at what those emotions are really saying, anger being that we're not feeling seen or heard, or that things are not changing, people are not acting on what our feedback is from our anger, that then we get frustration, which is here we go again, which is a build on the anger. It's like a repetition of the same arguments, the same things coming up, same things making us angry. And then resentment is when is it my turn? And that those three emotions I find often are connected to hot flushes. So that can be during the day. It might be, I remember a client saying how she was at the hairdresser and she had this massive hot flush come over her. And so then I asked her, well, what was going on at that time? And then she thought back to it and said, I remember there was this young girl sitting next to me and her conversation was really irritating me because it was all to do with her appearance. And that then, as we unpacked that, it became apparent that it was that my client was feeling frustrated about her own appearance, and also frustrated and angry that this woman next to her, this young woman, was basing what seemed to be so much of the value of herself upon her appearance. So then also, if you think with hot flushes too, how they can happen overnight, there's this phrase by, I think it was Alain de Botton, who'd said, what we don't deal with at 3 p.m., we deal with at 3 a.m. So if you're getting hot flushes at that sort of time in the night, that maybe you might be able to unpack that and maybe journal on that of what's bothering you at 3 a.m., what anger or frustration or resentment is coming up. Another couple of emotions that are really common in menopause that seem to bother women a lot are sadness and grief. And sometimes they can be to do with the sadness of realizing that stage of life, that maiden and mother stage of life, is coming to an end, and the grief of the loss of that part of our lives of going, well, where I'm starting to realize that I'm going to be leaving that behind. Those physical changes, maybe perhaps the image that you have had, the way that people have perceived you, that you're starting to realize that that's going to then change. So then who am I going to become? And that's where we need to tap into that inner power. So all of these emotions, I'm talking about negative emotions, sometimes it's fear, and fear is often wrapped up in anxiety and in and depression as well. So any of those negative emotions, if you think of how long we've been on the planet, can be that we've been suppressing them for so long, for so many decades, and now they're starting to rise to the surface going, I just don't have any more capacity. I'm up to here with these emotions. So it's time to deal with them. And so it can be almost like having that control knob has been ramped up, so you become more sensitive to it. The more sensitive you become to your anger, to your sadness, to your resentment perhaps, and that you might get to that point where you feel like, I just don't want to do anything that doesn't bring me joy. I don't want to do anything that is irritating me anymore. I'm not going to deal with these things at home. I'm not going to deal with these things at work. I'm just going to start saying how I feel. And so then it might be that those people in your life start going, oh, wow, oh, she's going through the menopause. Well, it could be that, definitely, but it can also be simply part of this amazing process that helps you to liberate yourself from being a people pleaser, from sucking it up, that you're actually starting to verbalize what you really think and how you really feel, which can be a positive. So part of what I would be recommending is how to be able to channel that in a way and communicate that in a way that is effective, that it's helping to get your point across, because you know what this is setting boundaries. And how, hands up, who of us who really would like to be better at setting boundaries and maintaining them? So that's something that you can really start to integrate and see as a positive, rather than this old school kind of way of thinking of, oh, she's menopausal, her emotions are out of control and she's a bit scary. When actually you can identify it as it's starting to build up and go, oh, this is an opportunity for me to actually get across what I really feel, whether it's at home, it's with my partner or my kids, or with my boss or colleagues or a family member that you've always just thought, I'll just keep the peace and I won't say anything. Maybe now it's your time. So there's this whole thing which I like to think of, it's like a unique cocktail of life experience, plus your soul's purpose, plus your inner desires, plus your unmet needs. And so why now? Well, it's fueled by your hormonal shifts, and that fire has now been lit. So we can either try and suppress it, which might make the symptoms either worse or last for longer, or if we actually take that opportunity and start to then express them, and maybe in a different way to how we might have in the past, but in a way that's constructive. It can just help. Like, it's amazing. I love seeing how women who might have come to me with really bad hot flushes, that by doing this inner work, that it starts to just dissipate them. And then other things may come up. But it's once you've started the process and realize that you can start to do the work to help to heal yourself, then it opens up lots of opportunities for you, and you start feeling more responsible. It may not that you feel more in control, but when you feel more responsible for yourself, it gives you such a sense of agency that you want to continue and then go, okay, well, what else can I do? What else can I do to help improve my state of mind, my contentment within my own skin? And then that's where the shift really happens. So another element that I also want to touch on is how, if we look at menopause as it being like a mirror to how we experience puberty, it's like going, we're on our way out, so therefore how do we come into this period of our lives? And that as we look back on puberty for ourselves, it can help us to make sense of what we've been suppressing. Because if you ever think you've had a bad experience of something in your life, the chances are, like for example, maybe you went horse riding once and it was a bad experience, so perhaps you never want to do it again. Well, what if that's the same thing with going through puberty? So if you reflect back on when you got your first period, maybe when you got your first bra fitted, the first time you had sex, there's some examples of opportunities to do the work, to go back, reflect on those individual circumstances. And if they weren't pleasant, or you didn't feel supported, or you felt some shame about it, then perhaps that has had an effect on how you felt about your whole fertility journey and perhaps your whole sexuality during that time. Also, if you've had any trauma in the past, that can also really affect how you feel about yourself and how you feel about then your menopause going forwards. So there's also things like what your beliefs are based on what you inherited from your family. So it might be about when you were growing up, what your family situation was like and what you were allowed to feel or express about being a woman, sexuality, sex, relationships, expectations, how you express yourself. About anything, and were you respected about your choices, your views, your beliefs, any of those things. So all of that can add up to what's inside yourself, and that as you start going through that menopausal process, what does that stir up within you as well? So that's something that I would recommend that you might be able to journal on or write down about, is each of those individual situations or circumstances, because they can really help you to understand more about yourself. And that as things are coming up during this menopausal process, they might be flaring up as such old beliefs that actually these are now opportunities for growth. So my suggestion is for you to acknowledge as you feel and experience emotions in this stage of your life. And that if you journal what you're feeling and then also what's going on, like I mentioned about the client who was, when she remembered that she was at the hairdresser's when she had that hot flush. And as you start to unpack and delve deeper, then that's when you start to learn more about yourself. And again, I mentioned that book, Wise Power, which I've found really helpful. I did a lot of journaling through that process, which just created this whole cascade of realizations about my past that have helped me to make peace with those, and also to realize that some of those things I used to believe about myself or about my sexuality and about relationships actually is completely different. And that was just a story I was telling myself. So I work with my clients in this way. I love doing work on emotions and menopause. If that's something of interest and something you really feel that resonates with you, please reach out and let's set up a time to have a discovery call and see how I might be able to help you. And in the meantime, please feel free to look at the PDF, which I will attach to this, so that then you can go back through and do that journaling if you feel that that's appropriate for you.